You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact, a podcast all about Star Trek The Next Generation. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This week we have been watching Allegiance. It first aired the week of March 26, 1990. It was written by Richard Manning and Hans Beimler and directed by Winner Colby. What happens in this one, James?
Picard gets kidnapped by a weird sparkly slab and is replaced by a flawed clone. He finds himself in a room with three others, a Starfleet cadet, a cowardly alien, and an angry alien. They all set off together to find the lost city of Oz. No, that's not right. They all respond differently to their imprisonment, but try to work together to find a solution. Meanwhile, Picard's clone is starting to act erratically, but surely the crew won't mutiny. Or will they?
So Alex, you'd never seen this episode before. What were your thoughts?
I haven't seen this episode, but I have seen multiple Saw films for my sins, and I kind of felt like I was watching one of those. There was some cheesy overacting, some sort of pig mask, essentially, and I was really waiting for the mutilation at the end. It's fine. Yeah, that was enjoyable enough. I was far more interested in the section that wasn't Captain Picard in one of those trendy panic rooms that you get in East London with an hour to escape the room.
Yeah, it was a bit like that. But anyway, let's go right to the beginning of this episode. Captain's log, casually, we've cured the plague on this planet. What? Oh, did we not want to see that? We see the episodes with you sort of just, we've got to go on shore leave because we are waiting our next mission. But no, we've been on this planet, we're curing a plague. I mean, that sounds like an interesting adventure, Perhaps Beverly could have come up with a cure of some kind, moved on scientific knowledge, but no.
No, it could have ended up like them having to have a fight to the death for a vaccine. I think we're better off not seeing that.
Captain's log. We've just spent 3 months on the planet of the nymphomaniacs. Now, I'm reading my book.
But anyway, we get a glimpse into Picard's bedroom. Did you enjoy that?
Am I misremembering, or was it very much an open-gowned Stuart?
It very much was. I think it's a look he favours. I'm guessing, and I might be wrong, that maybe he's been working out over the course of the season and has demanded the writers put in some topless scenes, as we will see in forthcoming episodes. But it's some additions to Picard's wardrobe, which are exciting and innovative and delightful.
Well, it wasn't really an addition to his wardrobe. It was removing something from his wardrobe.
True. But anyway, he gets kidnapped by a slab.
Yeah, I mean, when you're starting the episode with the captain reads his book, the captain's kidnapped, you kind of want to up the excitement somewhat with a good special effect. Never mind.
At least they didn't go the route of just having a basic kind of transporter effect. Give them credit for that.
And hey, at least they didn't end up in essentially some sort of boiler room that's just really badly constructed out of MDF. God, imagine.
So he's kidnapped. There's an energy surge, and the crew look sort of concerned. We're like, yeah, it's probably nothing. It's fine. We won't investigate this any further. Which is except there was an unusual energy surge in the captain's quarters, and we'll maybe think about it later. But if it seems fine, it's probably fine. Probably fine.
Well, I'm sure there are energy surges all the time around the ship. Data's quarters, Geordie's quarters, Riker's quarters. You know what type of electronics Riker needs.
It's an interesting setup. Let's take Picard, put him into a new situation. And I think the set, it feels a bit like a sort of a slightly failed Red Dwarf set or something. It's just not quite intimidating enough or enclosed enough. It's just a bit nothing. It does feel like it's been made up of spare parts, basically. And let's just put a bar of lights here that sort of twinkle. Fine. Great. But he's put in with these two, initially, other prisoners. A young Starfleet cadet wearing a rather fetching uniform. And a cowardly alien. I love this. I love this idea. It just seems like something out of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. A whole species of surrenderers, of collaborators, just aliens that will do anything just to get along.
An idea that Doctor Who nicked a few years ago with David Walliams.
All ideas become new again, don't they? It's not like Star Trek had done a great deal with it.
No. I mean, and essentially, let's look at some of those makeup jobs. I mean, essentially, with the cadet, it sort of appears of, what can we do to, make her look a bit different? We can't just have her as another human. We've got to do something with her look. Okay, well, what about maybe we make her sort of bluish? I like it, but I think a bit more. Seam down the middle of her face. You're a genius.
I actually quite like the Bolium makeup myself. I think it at least differentiates her from, just a generic forehead or a nose ridge.
And hey, at least she didn't have some sort of bizarre wolf teeth.
Well, quite. They bring in the other alien later in the episode. Quite why they're sort of all put in at different times, I don't know, just to add some dramatic effect, I guess. And it's this alien who is an angry alien, but it's not a Klingon. And you just sort of think, well, just make it a Klingon. We know what they're sort of all about, but I guess maybe the next generation Klingons don't have the right attributes to kind of fit into this scenario.
Or make her a Nausicaan.
Yeah, I did think Nausicaan as soon as I saw that, and then I thought, have we seen Nausicaans yet?
Actually, I don't think we have seen Nausicaans yet. I'm not sure if they're introducing about season 6, I think.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a bit broad, I think, in some ways, the characterization. But again, this section of the episode feels a lot like it's almost a kind of an off-West End play. You can imagine Captain Picard, just this waiting room, just where aliens sit and wait to meet their makers.
Well, I mean, if I was going to go up market with what it reminds you of, I could exactly go down that train of thought and say, that sort of waiting for Godot. You're waiting around, no one comes, you're just waiting for something to happen. In that case, for 2 hours. But I think that's the wrong tone for this podcast. So I'm going to compare it to the second half of Bottom Live 4, 2001, An Arse Odyssey. With the two characters just stuck in a dome, essentially, with a button. That also went on for half the runtime, and I wished it hadn't, because it was far less interesting.
It's a classic kind of drama, but science fiction certainly uses it a lot. Let's trap the characters together. Star Trek uses it a lot, and usually it's characters we know. Can you get them stuck in a turbo lift? Can you get them stuck in a shuttle pod? Crash them on an ice moon and get people to talk. It's a very easy way to do television. This is different because it's new characters, and it's a bit Agatha Christie because, can we trust anyone? Is one of them the bad guy?
To be fair, Star Trek also does this basic premise of a main character being stuck with a random alien and having to get along quite a bit.
Well, imagine if Geordi went blind and then had to work for Romulan, for example.
Or imagine if Picard was trapped on a planet without a communicator and without a universal translator and had to understand another alien.
Well, it reminds me a lot of when Kirk fought the Gorn and they came to a mutual understanding based on not killing each other.
Time Trip was stuck on that really hot planet with that other alien, and they had to get along in order to communicate with the Enterprise.
Or that time that Eddie hit Richie in the face with a spade.
No one's getting your references. No one.
The one thing I would say, though, is that you say it's kind of like an Agatha Christie thing, and yes, I think for this type of plot to succeed, you don't necessarily have to have more than one character you're familiar with. If we're to take a recent cinema example, Quentin Tarantino's last film, The Hateful Eight, you don't really know any of those characters, but it's written so very well that it balances the fact that you don't, with the distrust between each party, and I think it works exceedingly well in doing so. The problem that I have here is that there's not a great deal of depth to the characters. We can take Picard off the table because Picard's the character we know, but we have one character who's just incessantly negative about everything. We have another character who wants to pick a fight with everything, and another character who doesn't really have one. And that's sort of mostly the be-all and the end-all of their characters. It doesn't give you the basis for people to have conversations with each other, or at least not long extended diatribes with each other. You just end up with these very short, basic, well, I'll do nothing of the sort. Well, you wouldn't, you're a coward. Yeah, well, you're a warmonger. And it's just that several times over.
Well, there's nothing to explore because you know what all of them are. You've got the Picard, I guess. He's the commander, the man who gives orders. You know, it's stated as explicitly in the episode. You've got the anarchist, as they call them, and I was sort of like, is that right? Is that right? I don't know. Yeah, you have the coward who'll sort of simperingly go along with anything. And then you also have the cadet, who sort of also simperingly goes along with anything. Oh yes, Captain Picard, you're so wonderful. Yes, he's one of the finest guys in Starfleet. I'm going to give away my plan. They're not interesting enough. None of the characters are enough of a mystery or interesting enough to actually intrigue you or to make you suspect any but one of them, because they're the only one that's sort of nothing enough to kind of maybe be hiding something. So I don't think it necessarily works as a mystery, but it doesn't fail either. It's perfectly fine, which sounds like our most common insult, but
the thing is, I think we have more praise for it, perhaps, because you can't have too much in the way of having the characters converse, because they're slightly one note, aside from Picard. The way to do it is to have that mystery room element, how you escape from the room, and really play into that. But really, we don't have very much with it. We have an electrified door. We have food that's inedible to one party. I can only assume that he doesn't like jelly, because that appears to be what it is, a slab of jelly the size of a hockey puck. And that's kind of it until they unlock the door, they discover that it's a wall, and then it's over. And perhaps if they had more of the mystery element there, if they'd gone a bit more Crystal Maze, it could have covered up some of those sins. Whereas in actual fact, what we end up sometimes doing is we'll get a bit of the way into the scene and then go, this is fine, but I'd much rather be back with the plot on the Enterprise.
I don't think they play up enough of the kind of the elements that are kind of hinted at as well. One, we're trapped in a maze and we've got to solve some puzzles. And you think, well, you don't really. There's a door that you can't open, and that's kind of there. And there's a food dispenser which gives out lovely pink soap. And I sort of think, well, if it really is problems to solve, let's see them solving, say, more than one problem. Maybe reaching a different room, a bit like in Cube, or something like that.
I have a problem. Where was the toilet?
You don't need a toilet in the future.
Where did they ever get that idea, though? Where did they ever get the idea that they were supposed to be solving a problem? Because there's really nothing to suggest that. What it suggests is, here is your cell.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then Picard at the end says, "We are rats in a maze," and you think, well, you're not, because they didn't have a budget for a maze. Again, that's slightly disappointing because there's not enough peril in any of it. It's, oh, if this one doesn't eat the food that he licked once and said was poison, he's going to start eating the coward guy, and that's our ticking clock.
I mean, good luck eating anything with those teeth, but...
Yeah, and it's sort of like, well, I don't care. I don't care so much about that. And it's not like they've really been put under a massive amount of stress in any way, like you would in a sort of laboratory test. It's just, you didn't have to try and open the door. You could have just waited. You didn't have to get struck by the beam. You could have licked your soap. There's possibly more they could have done, but conversely, I'm not sure I would have really been that interested in that either. It might have been a bit nice for it to be a little bit more dangerous, because it does feel like this is going to be solved in a stagey kind of way, and they're going to get out at the end. Which we know, because it's episodic television, but it just was a little bit soft for me.
It's Star Trek The Next Generation being safe, which it is kind of a criticism, but it's also praising that Next Generation, up until this point, wasn't capable of producing an episode which is just fine. Could have been better, but, it's some good filler. It's gotten to the point where Star Trek is capable of producing episodes week in, week out, which at least don't offend us. Offend us both because they're racist or sexist, but also because they're just so bad. We're not going to get that week in, week out, or even every other week. We're just going to get episodes that are fine, that don't break the mould, but just do Star Trek quite well. And, it's 40 minutes gone.
For a minute, I genuinely thought you were going to praise them for actually, managing to make an episode each week.
Let's move on to the other plot, because I'm slightly running out of stuff to say. I find this idea fascinating, and it's actually, you could almost have done the whole episode on the ship. Imagine if you've got a clone that has the same interests and memories, but doesn't know how to interpret them. It has the behaviours, but it's a little bit erratic. It's all a little off. That's quite interesting, and I think it's done very well, because you can imagine Picard saying all of these things, but just not necessarily in these particular scenarios.
I like the way that it builds as well, with Picard, coming into each situation, but then taking one of our key cast aside and, saying, Riker, do you trust me? Yes, of course. Yes, but do you really trust me? Would you, for example, not complain if I touched you here? No, I wouldn't complain about that. I wouldn't even have to ask you for dinner. Well, this is quite the turn-on. I like all of that element. And yeah, I think it builds the mystery there better than it does in the other location, even though you clearly know in this location that this isn't our Picard. This isn't right. It still manages to build it because you have the idea of what's he up to, why have they changed their course, why is he so interested in what the crew think, and it's perhaps a promise that they can't fulfill, which perhaps also describes the date scene.
We don't ever really find out the agenda there. Is it just, let's leave a passable version of this guy for the time being? Or are they actually controlling them? Do they have an agenda with the Enterprise? It doesn't seem like they do, but in which case, why is it then changing course? Why is it going off? Why is it basically killing the crew? Why is it acting so suspiciously? And I guess it's a misunderstanding of human culture, not really getting that, and it's never explained. It probably doesn't need to be explained. It's enough fun to have Picard acting weird.
Although I do have one question that arose from it, which is okay, they've changed the course, and I get it that they are heading into the pulsar because they're trying to test at what point do the crew turn. But if they didn't, if they continued, and I mean, let's be fair, the alien species doesn't know one way or the other. They are right on the verge of destroying the ship. Would that have continued? I mean, is that literally all that's going to happen? Is just that they're ploughing into the pulsar until everything blows up?
It didn't seem like there was a real malevolence to these aliens. They're just kind of... They think of the humans... Well, not just humans, but all of the ship as basically lab rats. Which, okay, isn't nice, but it also means that we have aliens who aren't just generic evil. They're on this different level.
Again, it falls back on that theme that seems to be kind of inserted later on in the episode, which is how do people react to authority? And this Picard has a very different sort of authority, and how far can they go before the crew mutinies? Is that maybe the experiment that they don't explicitly state? I don't know. But anyway, let's talk about the creepy poker game then.
Geordie, what's the engine efficiency? It's 93%, Captain. 93%, that is good, isn't it? Well, I'd like to get it up to 94%. Why? It's pretty damn efficient at the moment. Yes, but I really feel that extra percent would really make a difference. It'd just make a much smoother ride. The fluffy dice wouldn't bounce quite so much on the bridge.
To be fair, he wants 96% efficiency.
Well, we've all had a boss like that.
The thing is, Georgie spends one afternoon there, and what, does he get up to 97%? I mean, I think if it was that easy, it should have been that efficient all along, and Clone Picard was damn right to make Georgie go and do that.
96%, now that is impressive. But, Mr. LaForge, I'd like you to get the ship up to 115% efficiency. Captain, that's not even a number. Geordie, do you need me to remind you of the virtual woman again? But, I mean, Picard isn't interested in that poker game, but he does seem to have another poker game on his mind.
Oh, dear me. So, there's a dinner with Dr. Beverly Crusher. He wonders if there could be something more. This sort of subtext that's been playing since the pilot, but not really, because nobody really wants it to happen or is invested in this relationship in any way. So,
well, to be fair, I think some people wanted it to happen. It was Gene Roddenberry who said, no, there must be no relationships in the future.
Everybody's just gonna be a swinger. That's what it's gonna be. That's gonna be the future. All waves will come.
Yeah, and so we get to see them in their casual clothes. Another open top from Picard and a sort of a body condom from Beverly.
He does sort of appear to have come in open dressing gown.
Well, it's in his quarters. It's more intimate.
Captain, what brought this in mind? Really, you have to ask. I'm sat here in an open pseudo-silk kimono, and you're questioning this matter?
Would it have been more entertaining if something had happened? Like, if something actually dramatically had occurred in this relationship that then he would never find out about, rather than it just being really cringy and a bit awkward and weird?
At what point would she have mutinied?
The insinuation is that these are his feelings. So, it's kind of... It makes dramatic sense to reveal these feelings in this way. It's just unfortunate that because it's an episodic show, it's never followed up.
But I guess it is this button-down captain. It's another way to raise suspicions of the crew. So dramatically it works in that way, in that it's raising suspicions in multiple ways. But my favourite way is the scene in 10 Forward.
I would like an ale. In fact, ales for everyone. Now,
that is the most empty gesture he could have made.
Money doesn't exist in the future. So, surely, ales for everyone, well, surely that's a given. You know, you don't get any kudos for walking into Tesco's and going, "Gentlemen, shopping trolleys for all." Thanks, I kind of assumed they would be.
I guess that explains the muted reaction as well, where everyone's like, I don't want an ale. It's not like, way, ale, synth ale.
Real ale drinkers, I mean, God.
So nobody's that interested in the ale, and then he just starts reminiscing, which is excellent.
Who'd like to join me in a sing-along to some dirty rugby songs? Yeah. It's fun, though.
It is good fun.
There's kind of not a lot more to add to it, is there? I mean, the fun of this episode is watching Picard have a mental breakdown, seemingly. They
never suspect the captain is having some kind of breakdown. The captain is not well. There must be some kind of outside influence, or this isn't the captain. Maybe it is. Maybe he's just really experienced too much. Maybe it's Bendai syndrome. You just don't know.
It's a midlife crisis. If they waited a little bit longer, he would have come back with an Enterprise painted in red.
But yeah, I guess it all reaches its natural conclusion by the bad guys just giving themselves away. It's you, isn't it? Yeah, it is us.
We may have imprisoned you, but at least you can't imprison us, hey? Let's go, Steve. Oh, shit!
With one nod of my head, Riker typed some things onto a panel, for some reason to Data, not directly to Worf, and then Data tapped some more things on a panel, and then that went to Worf, and then he created a weird sort of purple beam for some reason.
As you can see, with just a nod of my head, I can have you imprisoned. But we're not imprisoned. But I gave the nod to Riker. That was the nod? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted me to bid on your eBay auction. Oh, well, you won it.
I mean, could you not have just said force field? What do you think of those aliens? I'm starting to think less is more. In some ways, I appreciate them doing different stuff, and I do get bored when it's just the human aliens. But I mean, a lot of them look rubbish.
I do kind of feel that we've reached that point where we're playing, and now guess this week's head sculpt.
It's hard to pull off a different look for so many races, and when you're doing it for 1 week only. And it's different, but it's sort of different in that, yes, it's a humanoid just standing there. Wouldn't you rather have a ball of gas alien, you know? Some little glowy lights like Attack Q? I don't know, it seems very, they're all sort of like humans. Fine, okay.
And they have very tight outfits.
That's where all the material from Picard's costume went, you know. That's why it was so open and revealing. They didn't have the budget, they cut some out, they stuck it on them. I kind of feel they, like the ending of this episode, were just a bit underwhelming. The whole ending of the episode was just sort of very, very rushed. As you say, it's you, isn't it? Yes, it is. Oh. Well, don't do it again. Well, we might. Well, I'll imprison you. Oh, well, we definitely won't then. Good. Da 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 da.
Yeah, I don't think... Do you feel Picard's lesson was enough? Yeah, you've learnt about imprisonment for the 30 seconds there.
Yeah, Steve and Larry are clearly going to end up going back to their race and saying, shit, those experiments we ran, they've got bastard prisons they can put us in. What's a prison? I don't know, but I couldn't get out of it. Christ. Well, I suppose we've just been experimenting on them, but I guess I better kill them all.
That would have been good if they were the new big bads and they just come in at the finale and wipe out half of humanity.
Every week they just stick the crew in an escape room.
So all in all, it's a perfectly decent, solid episode. Some people say that we're harsh on the solid episodes, but we're not. That's just how you talk about stuff. to pick out the points and just amplify them a little bit to make for interesting podcasting. Yeah, I think it was perfectly enjoyable, perfectly diverting. It has some themes. Could it have been better? Possibly. As a weekly episode of television, perfectly diverting for the time it was on.
It was a cheap episode. It was an episode made in order to mean that they could make yesterday's Enterprise.
But on the plus side, we saw Patrick Stewart's nipples.
Quickfire.
A brief reaction shot of Worf on the bridge seeing Picard's doppelganger change into its true appearance is a stock shot taken from a previous episode, The Survivors, because he's wearing an earlier version of a Starfleet uniform that debuted in Evolution. It would have been great if we just had other stock shots inserted at that point. You know, we cut away to Tasha Yar reacting. We cut away to Pulaski reacting. It reminds me of that scene in Futurama where Bender is on All My Circuits and Calculon just says to add a load of reaction shots in. So we see Bender just make his big speech and then you just cut to Calculon on a beach reacting. This episode marks the second appearance of a Bolian after Captain Ricks in the episode Conspiracy. Although technically, Metana Harrow is actually a fake Bolian. Which is a very interesting way of wording it, as Memory Alpha do.
You know, I didn't know Bolians could have hair up to this point, so it's exciting to know.
Yeah, I mostly know them of the hairdresser, which is a recurring character on Next Generation.
Yes, Mr. Mott.
What are you doing? He's typing numbers to try and show them that we're intelligent. Oh, really? Well, what's he put in there? Well, if you have a look here and you turn your head upside down, you'll see it says boobs.
Do you know the episode has been compared to the classic Twilight Zone episode, 5 characters in search of an exit, but no one's ever said that is the case or there's any connection whatsoever. But it's been compared to it. And we've compared it to other stuff today, so maybe someone else will say it on some podcast in the future. The song that Picard sings in 10 Forward is called Heart of Oak, now available on Paramount Records.
Director Winwright Colby said of the episode, I think the only thing I would change right now is that I would get a Steadicam. That's it.
What would he change about the episode?
That's certainly insightful, isn't it?
What he has a further insightful comment if you'd like to hear it. He does go on and he says, I really liked the episode.
Well, that's that episode over. I hope you enjoyed our intriguing bants all about it. We'll be back again soon when we will be talking about Captain's Holiday, which features some more Captain Picard in various states of undress. Goodbye.
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 This is the most boring episode in terms of the production, isn't it? It's just the most generic autopilot episode of Star Trek The Next Generation.
It's basically a bottle show, but it's not.
It had me turn into the bottle.
Hey. Did you have an ale?
Oh Christ! I think we've got to call that one.
Time of death, 8:38.